welcome back to Industry Insider, the podcast where we dive into the tools, trends, and technology shaping the collision repair world. I'm your host, Mackenzie Grant, and today we're joined by Steve Dawson, the Washington, D.C. Regional Manager for Hunter Engineering. We're digging into a topic every shop owner and technician needs to keep on their radar: why alignments matter, and why bringing an alignment system in-house can transform your workflow, your cycle time, and your bottom line. Whether you're running a busy shop or turning wrenches on the floor, this conversation is packed with insights you can put to work right away. So, Steve, for anyone who hasn't met you, can you share a bit about your role at Hunter Engineering and what you do within the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the regional manager for the Washington, D.C. area, overseeing the sales and service team here, but I also work with the collision groups around the country. So I have an opportunity to visit with shops, to be at different trade events, to be able to really kind of understand the collision side of the industry and how Hunter can have a positive effect on that part of the industry, and try and make it a little bit more profitable for shops when they have Hunter equipment be adding in wheel service to their operations.
That's amazing. And in simple terms, what does an alignment system actually do within the context of collision repair?
So it's a great question. There is a lot of different points that it can do. Our newest alignment system, the Ultimate ADAS, I like to talk about it, has 3 points that it touches the car. So if we use it right away in the repair process, we identify bent components that happen within the accident or maybe in the recovery process. We identify, do we have a bent tie rod end? Do we have a bent control arm? Do we have a bent subframe? We can even identify that we may have some more structural problems that we need to look further into with our traditional measuring system. Then it's going to do our final alignment after we've done all of our paint work, all of our metal work. We've gotten the car ready to go. It's going to do the final alignment process to ensure that our subframes, our suspension, everything is pointed in the right direction going down the road. And then now with that tool, we also add in the ADAS calibrations. So in a seamless process from the alignment, go right into the ADAS calibration procedures and make sure that we're aligning the cameras and the radar systems just like we're aligning the wheels. So it saves the shop a lot of time of having to sublet or move the car to different places, as well as identifying those damages up front, reduces the need for supplemental claims, reduces the need for replacing multiple parts to try and figure out what's wrong. They actually have the measurements and know what's wrong.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on it a bit there, but why is an in-house alignment system becoming one of those essential pieces of equipment for collision centers?
I think that's really where it's going. I liken it to, paint booths and some of the other tools. You might have had to have them years and years ago, but you could get away without them. And today you can't. With today's, paint procedures and things, you can't not have an inferior booth. And I think as time goes on here, alignments are going to be the exact same way. Just recently was working through a collision where a car was stuck in traffic. Car came up and hit the back end of it, knocked it into the car in front of it. It was a very small hit, damaged a couple bumper covers, a little reinforcement bar work, and that repair was almost 60% calibrations and alignment work. If you're not in that business, you're potentially, as time goes on here, going to be giving up 50 or 60% of your repair process to a sublet company because you're not doing it in-house.
Wow, yeah. And what are the biggest workflow challenges that shops are facing when they choose to sublet those alignments?
So the biggest challenge is transporting the vehicle from one place to another and scheduling it into that other shop. So in many cases, that might be a same day turnaround, or it may be 2 or 3 days before that shop that you're subletting it to can take it in. The other side of that is you've got to transport it there. So that means either putting it on a rollback or a tow truck and towing it to that shop, or having 2 people drive it. And now we're talking about a car that is, potentially not aligned correctly, that the ADAS systems are not operating correctly, that we're driving down the road. And maybe it's only a few miles, but that puts us at a significant liability, as well as costs us 2 productive bodies out of our shop that are now driving a car down the road to go sublet that repair to somebody else for us to make a small amount on that repair.
And how does bringing an alignment system in-house directly affect cycle time?
Well, so it impacts again in a multitude of ways that if we have the equipment in our shop, we're going to start doing that process right away. So if we do our pre-alignment assessment and we identify components, now when we order the hood and the bumper for the repair, we're actually ordering the control arm that we need as well. So we're not waiting for parts down at the end of the repair. Then once we're getting it into the shop, again, we're not worrying about scheduling with another vendor. We're actually taking care of it in-house right in our workflow, so we can schedule it to go right from maybe paint or right from final cleanup to go right into the alignment procedure. So there's not necessarily a lot of waiting time. We're in complete control of that repair, not only quality wise but also timing wise, which allows us to deliver that car when we expect to, instead of having to wait a couple of days to get it back from that vendor. Then we've got to, it's been sitting outside in their lot. We've got to re-clean the car. All of those kind of things add, if it's 15, 20 minutes, an hour, or days, adds to that cycle time. And I was with a shop just recently that was talking about, that's all well and good, but we're a DRP shop. So we struggle with those kind of things because of the way that the insurance company kind of dictates things to us. And one of the things that we talked about was, just imagine from the insurance company's standpoint, if you can deliver that car back to that customer 1, 2, 3 days earlier, that's a whole lot less rental car that insurance company is paying for. And they're getting a customer that is much happier with that car because they got it back right away, as opposed to potentially having that customer think, wow, this took forever to get done. Maybe I should look for a different insurance company, or next time maybe go to a different body shop. So all of these steps reduce down that cycle time and improve the customer experience for everybody involved in the process, not only the customer, but also the insurance company and the body shop.
Yeah. And how have you seen owners react to how quickly alignments are becoming a consistent revenue line when you're reducing those cycle times?
But it's interesting that there's a lot of hesitation up front, putting in an alignment rack, putting in an alignment system many times takes up some precious square footage that they were using for something else. And everybody kind of works on that idea of the fear of, well, how is this going to negatively impact me? And what they end up finding is that in a very short time frame, there's such a huge positive impact that it's really eye-opening to them. So recently I was at a show, and I was talking with a customer that was contemplating putting in alignment, very hesitant with the time frames and what it was going to take. And we talked about the fact that he had a frame machine that he could put our mobile turn plates on and put an alignment machine in front of that frame machine and use that as his rack. So he's kind of getting double duty out of that same bay. And I said to him that, one of the things that I think will happen is that within a year, you'll come to me and say, you know what, I can be even more efficient if I have a rack that, that matches the aligner, that communicates with the aligner, that is much more efficient to do this. I said, I'm anticipating within a year, you're going to do that. And not 2 seconds later was somebody walking by that said, you know what? He told me that exact same thing last year, and it took me a few months before I realized that I needed an alignment rack, and put in that alignment rack. And we still use the mobile turn plates on the floor to do the assessments, but we use the alignment rack to really drive our productivity within the shop. So it's one of those things that eventually gets a pretty visceral response that it's, this was one of the best decisions I ever made. But sometimes it's helping people get over that hurdle of, I might lose a little bit of square footage to put this in, but it's going to be a very productive bay in the long run.
Yeah. And moving back kind of to that customer impact that you had mentioned earlier, how often do you see minor hits like the parking lot tap or just a light collision cause some measurable alignment issues?
So that is one of those things that it's very easy to do when you look at where a wheel is positioned when the impact happened. I often use for a reference, at one point I had my car sitting in my driveway, my wheels turned a little bit to the left side, and my son backed down the driveway. He was probably no more than half a car length away from me. As he backed up, he kind of put a little scratch in my front bumper, and hit his rear tire onto my front tire that was turned a little bit left. And it was a company car at the time. I was working for a different company. And they said, take it right to the body shop to have the scratch in the bumper repaired. So I took it to the body shop. They refinished the bumper cover. And then I started driving the car and realized that something felt really funny in the front end. Well, here, when he hit the tire, it actually bent the control arm. And because it was a rubber to rubber hit, that force, it seemed, any damage at the wheel got absorbed, but it was never found because it never went on an alignment rack to determine that control arm actually got bent in that very small, very low speed parking lot style impact. So we see that more and more often. And I have another customer that actually settled with an insurance company for the same kind of thing. Somebody was pulling into a parking spot. The front bumper went down along the side of a pickup truck, and evidently it caught the rear wheel or the rear tire as it did that. They settled with the insurance company for the body damage. We put it on the alignment rack after that settlement was done and found that the car had actually sheared the pin that holds the rear axle straight underneath the rear springs. So the axle had shifted off about 3/8 of an inch in the back. So now the truck wasn't going down the road straight, which not only affects the way that it handles, but also affects its ADAS calibrations and the way that the camera looks going down the road.
Yeah, what are those impacts of misalignment on functions, like the camera calibration or different ADAS functions?
Yeah, well, you're definitely going to get those, the handling, steering, suspension kind of things. My steering wheel doesn't return, doesn't go straight down the road. The car feels like it's a little unstable. But then, and the bigger impact of it now is that if that alignment is not right and that camera is looking a little bit to the left or looking a little bit to the right of what it should, it's either going to see things that it shouldn't and interact with them, or it's going to be not interacting when it needs to. So when that deer runs out in front of you, but the camera is kind of looking in the wrong direction, it doesn't see it, and the automatic braking doesn't engage. What scares me a little bit more is with the automatic braking is that when that alignment isn't right and then the camera and radar calibration isn't right, we now have automatic braking in these cars. So imagine driving down the road and a bridge overpass comes over the highway and it's just at the right angle that the car thinks it's in the road because it's not calibrated or aimed correctly, and it locks up the brakes. And when it locks up the brakes, that car right behind you, we know that there's a lot of people that like to tailgate, now comes right up to the back of you. It's a pretty scary experience. If anybody's had an automatic braking experience, they don't typically come on like, oh, let me slow down a little bit. There might be something in the road. It sees something in the road and it jams those brakes on hard. It's a pretty violent experience trying to keep you safe.
Yeah, they do tend to be a little forceful.
Yep.
For techs listening, what are some of the most common misalignment signs that they can miss without that proper equipment?
So the alignment signs that they can miss, without having it, they're typically, it's where we see that estimate that says that we're going to replace a knee, we're going to do a whole spindle control arm, and then maybe the insurance company comes back and says, well, let's just try the strut first and let's see if that fixes it. Well, that didn't fix it, so let's try the knuckle. We're eliminating all of that. We're going right to what we need, what's actually causing the problem with it. So there's a lot of those components too that, if there's a strut that's bent or a spindle that's damaged, even a tie rod end or a steering rack that's been impacted, it is not something you're going to see with the naked eye. It's not something where you can put a tape measure on it to measure where it's at. It's going to require some enhanced angles through an alignment machine to be able to do that, where you're actually looking for included angle and steering axis inclination and wheel setback to be able to determine what is that damaged component. And we provide a lot of tools within the machine, giving some red indicators to say that, hey, something's not right here, as well as some training to be able to train a technician as to how to interpret those numbers to determine that is a control arm or that is a tie rod end. And what's really important is to be able to have the documentation of that. So in a litigious world that we are, as well as just working through an insurance company that has to make sure that they're doing the right thing for their customer and they're doing the right thing for their business, they need to have that documentation to show that this is why we're replacing these components. And the only way to really do that is with the proper alignment equipment to give you the numbers that you need to be able to measure it. And probably most technicians have had a car come back from the garage down the street that does a maintenance alignment on it and give them here, something's bent, and hand them a maintenance alignment printout that they're going to be struggling with how to figure out what's actually bent.
Yeah. And how successful have shops been at handling that documentation side of it that you mentioned, especially as more and more OEM procedures are calling for those pre and post repair alignment checks?
So we try and make that pretty easy for them in the system where they can print out a whole multitude of different images, if that is actual readings and numbers and the specs for what that vehicle is, as well as even some visualizations of vehicle roll and steering radiuses and things to be able to build an entire package. The nice thing is once we get the numbers in the machine, it's quick and easy to print out the 4 or 5 different pages that would be required for that. And then on the back side of that, when we get into the ADAS calibration side of it, we're not only documenting that we've actually calibrated it and that we've gotten a positive result from the vehicle feedback saying that it was calibrated correctly, but we're also documenting exactly where every target was placed in relationship to the car. So looking at the center line and the distance from the front and rear axle, exactly where each one of those targets were placed. If it was for a front camera, for a front radar, for a rear radar, for surround view mats, we're documenting all of what was used, and the system even documents that the correct target was used as it went through that procedure. So we try and make it very easy to build that packet of information to share with the insurance company because, in just about every transaction that we do, no matter if it's customer facing or insurance facing, whoever we're presenting it to has got to sell it to someone else. If it's a field adjuster, they've got to justify it with their boss or with the company, or an insurance company may be subrogating that claim to another insurance company. They want to justify why they allowed that repair to be that dollar amount. The more that we can provide them that documentation, the easier that process is. And quite frankly, the more that the insurance company wants to deal with that body shop because they know they're going to get them all the documentation they need to be able to do any part of their claim process, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah. And when a collision shop is taking a look at alignment systems, what features matter the most for their environment in terms of what they would need to facilitate one?
The most important thing is, how much functionality does it have? Does it have the ability to do that pre-alignment assessment, the final alignment, and the ADAS calibrations afterwards? Trying to get a single tool to do multi-functions is a great use of space, a great use of cost, that sort of thing. You want to make sure that you got a system that is going to get you that complete documentation and make it very easy to get it. It's not going to be a lot of extra steps involved in trying to get that documentation or things that you have to make up and put together with it. You want to try and have it where it kind of helps you build that complete package. And then I think what's really critical in the collision space is that it's flexible in where that it works, that it can be on that frame machine. It can work with your bench system, or you can do it on the floor, or you can have an alignment rack to do it. To have that flexibility, I think is really important in the collision space.
Yeah, 100%. What does Hunter provide after installation in terms of updates, calibrations, and troubleshooting?
So we have a great support network. There's, I guess, about 500 or 600 service reps, actually probably well over 1,000 when you figure in business consultants and service reps that are out in the field that are there to support and help a customer be successful with the equipment. We also have 60-some training centers around the country that we do classes on a regular basis. If that's a level 1 alignment class, basically understanding the alignment procedures, or a level 2 of how to diagnose that more difficult, I got my steering wheel off center, the car is drifting, that sort of thing. Or the one that for the collision space is our level 3, which really digs into that. How do I use this as a diagnostic tool to understand what's going on with the vehicle? Plus, we have ADAS classes to do more of that, as well as support line through Bosch, who's a partner of ours with the scan tool that we use to activate things. We have a dedicated support line with them. And with that whole network of people, we're there to support and even provide training through our LMS system, our learning management system, where you can go to Hunter University and take online classes on a lot of this. That's where you would actually enroll in our in-person classes as well. And then we have a huge following in our YouTube learning channel, where we have a lot of these functions illustrated out in video, so that if somebody is struggling with something, they've got plenty of resources to be able to grab information, watch a video, understand it a little bit better, break it down into some smaller bits, and put that support in a multitude of places so that we can help everybody with where they're at in the process and have the right stuff for them.
Yeah, that sounds like some amazing resources there. So we've talked about that improved cycle time, that improved customer satisfaction, and also just improved accuracy. But what do you think is the biggest operational or financial opportunity that shops are missing by delaying investing in an alignment system?
Well, I think the one thing is that they're going to throw gross margin down the street. If they're, depending on what their relationship is, maybe they're marking it up a few dollars here and there. They're typically getting a maintenance alignment that's going to be, at a lower rate than really what a collision alignment would be and should be, to make sure that that car goes back to the customer the right way. So there's, when we're doing it in-house, we have the equipment there, the margins are significantly better than just subletting it to another shop. So there's a huge amount there. And then same kind of thing when it comes to the ADAS calibrations. Number one, we're doing the complete job. We're making sure that we're mitigating any chance of liability because maybe our sublet provider isn't doing the complete job or isn't following the OEM process, or we're just skipping it and saying, hey, just take it back to the dealer. Gives us that opportunity for a customer to defect and never come back to our shop again. But those calibrations tend to be pretty expensive or pretty lucrative, I should say, to the shop to be able to do. They are basically all labor. There's no parts involved in a lot of it. Actually, there's no parts in any of the ADAS calibrations. There's really no consumables. So it's something where there's a significant financial upside with it. And on the average, I hear from shops that they're spending, $5,000 to probably $15,000, somewhere in that range a month in doing sublet ADAS calibrations. Sometimes they're able to mark that up a couple dollars, sometimes not. But when I look at that, that's a significant amount of gross margin that they could be keeping in-house by having that equipment on hand. Not only all the other benefits of timing and, reducing cycle times, you're also generating a significant amount of revenue with it.
Yeah. And so for the shop owner who's listening, who's now completely sold and wants to start the process of getting their very own alignment system, what's their first step?
The first step for us would go to hunter.com. If you've never dealt with Hunter before, plug in your zip code into hunter.com or your mail code into hunter.com. It will give you the local sales and service regional manager team that's there to support you. There'll be 5 or 6 different pictures of that team that's there for support. Reach out to your business consultant. He'll come in and sit down and talk with you about what your business operation is and what's the right piece of equipment for what you're doing and how it can best situate in your shop. So we work with customers on how that flow could go, what they could do today versus what they may want to do in the future. So it's not like hey, you've got to do everything all at once, but we're also going to show them how getting fully involved with it is probably the most lucrative way to do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for those wonderful insights and for a really great conversation today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and more. Please be sure to download and subscribe.